Admiral Kexthar stood before the massive holographic display in the command center of the Zephyrian flagship Eternal Glory. The blue-skinned alien studied the star charts with his 4 eyes, each one focusing on different sections of the outer rim territories. His scaled fingers tapped against the metal console as he read through the latest intelligence reports. Another species discovered in Sector 7 Alpha, reported Lieutenant Zordon, his voice carrying the typical arrogance of the Zephyrian military. They call themselves humans. Our scouts count only 12 colonized systems. Primitive technology. Basic space travel capabilities. Kexthar barely glanced at the report. In his 300 years of service to the Zephyrian Galactic Empire, he had overseen the conquest of countless species. Most fell within days of first contact. The few that resisted usually lasted a few weeks at most. The Empire controlled over 40,000 star systems, and their military machine was unstoppable. 12 systems, he muttered, his voice deep and gravelly, not even worth a proper fleet deployment. Send Captain Zermak with a battle group. This should be finished before next cycle. On the other side of the galaxy, Commander Jake Morrison floated in the zero gravity of his ship's bridge, watching the stars through the viewport of the patrol vessel, New Horizon. The ship was small by military standards, designed for routine patrols and basic defense duties. Jake had been assigned to the Haven Prime sector for 6 months, and it had been quiet until today. Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, called out his sensor operator, Lisa Park. 3 unknown vessels approaching at sublight speed. They're big, sir. Much bigger than anything we've seen out here. Jake pushed himself over to the command console and strapped in. The artificial gravity kicked in as the ship went to alert status. Through the viewport, he could see 3 sleek vessels approaching. They were dark gray with strange markings along their hulls. Each ship was at least 5 times the size of the New Horizon. Open communications, Jake ordered. Let's see what they want. The main screen flickered to life, showing the face of an alien creature. It had blue skin, 4 eyes, and a mouth filled with sharp teeth. The translator worked quickly, converting the alien's words into English. Primitive vessel, you are in violation of Zephyrian space. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Jake looked at his crew. There were only 23 people on board, most of them young officers fresh out of training. The alien ships could probably destroy them without much effort. But Haven Prime was behind them, home to 3 million colonists who had no idea they were about to become part of an galactic empire. This is Commander Jake Morrison of the Human Colonial Defense Force, he replied calmly. You're in human territory. I suggest you turn around and leave peacefully. The alien on the screen made a sound that might have been laughter. Human? We have never heard of your species. You will surrender now, or we will take your ship by? Force. Jake looked at his weapons officer, Tom Bradley. The young man nodded slightly. The New Horizon might be small, but it was equipped with the latest human technology. Most importantly, it had been designed by people who understood that bigger wasn't always better. I'm sorry, but I can't do that, Jake said. The alien's expression changed. Then you will die, the communication ended. Jake watched as the 3 alien ships moved into attack formation. They were confident, moving slowly and deliberately. They'd probably thought this would be easy. Weapons hot, Jake ordered. Full power to shields. Let's show them what humans can do. The first alien ship fired a beam of red energy at the New Horizon. The human ship's shields absorbed the blast easily. Jake smiled. Human shield technology was designed to adapt to different types of weapons. The second shot would be less effective, the third even weaker. Return fire, Jake commanded. The New Horizon fired a single blue beam at the lead alien ship. The beam cut through the alien's shields like they weren't there and punched a hole clean through their hull. The ship began to spin out of control. Atmosphere venting from multiple breaches, the remaining 2 alien ships opened fire with everything they had. Red beams, missile-like projectiles, and strange purple energy bolts all struck the New Horizon. The human ship's shields held firm, actually growing stronger with each hit. How are their shields getting stronger? Tom asked, watching his sensor. Readings, adaptive technology, Jake explained. "The more they hit us, the better our defenses become. It's like our shields are learning their weapons." The second alien ship tried to ram the New Horizon. Jake ordered evasive maneuvers. The human ship moved with surprising speed and agility, dancing around the much larger alien vessel. As it passed, the New Horizon fired again. This time, the beam sliced the alien ship completely in half. The third alien ship began to retreat, but it was too late. The New Horizon had analyzed their propulsion system and could predict their movements. Another blue beam shot out, and the final alien ship exploded in a ball of fire. Jake sat back in his command chair and took a deep breath. "Lisa, send a message to Colonial Command. Tell them we've had first contact with a hostile alien species. 3 ships destroyed, no casualties on our side." "Should we recover their technology?" Tom asked. "No time," Jake replied. "If they send a scout group, the main force won't be far behind. We need to warn the colonies." Meanwhile, on the distant Zephyrian homeworld of Zephyr Prime, Emperor Veltar received the news of the encounter with growing irritation. The massive alien ruler sat on his crystal throne, his golden robes flowing around his enormous frame. His chief advisor, General Rexler, stood before him with a datapad containing the preliminary reports. "3 light cruisers destroyed?" the Emperor asked, his voice echoing through the throne room. "By a single primitive vessel?" The survivors claimed the human ship had adaptive shields and weapons that became more powerful during combat. Rexler reported carefully. "Captain Yomar believes they may have been lucky shots." The Emperor's 4 eyes narrowed. "Luck? 3 times?" "The human ship was very small, Your Majesty. Perhaps they loaded it with explosives and used kamikaze tactics." Emperor Veltar considered. Many primitive species had tried desperate tactics when faced with the Empire's might. Usually it only delayed the inevitable. "Double the force," he commanded. "Send Admiral Kexthar with a full battle group. 200 ships should be sufficient to handle these humans and their tricks." On Earth, President Lisa Carter sat in the Situation Room deep beneath the White House. The room was filled with military advisors, scientists, and intelligence officials. The large screen at the front of the room showed a map of human space, with red markers indicating the locations of alien activity. "The encounter at Haven Prime was just the beginning," reported Admiral Ryan Bell, commander of the Sol Defense Force. "Our intelligence suggests this Zephyrian Empire controls thousands of star systems. They've probably never encountered serious resistance." "What are our options?" President Carter asked. "We could try diplomatic contact," suggested Secretary of State in Davis. "Perhaps this is all a misunderstanding." Admiral Bell shook his head. "Their first message was a demand for surrender. They're not interested in diplomacy. They want conquest. What about our military capabilities?" the President asked. "The Colonial Defense Forces can handle small incursions," Bell replied. "Ships like the New Horizon are designed for patrol duties and minor conflicts. If they send a large fleet, we'll need to consider other options." President Carter looked around the room. "What other options?" Admiral Bell smiled grimly. "We could always send a message to the real fleet." The President nodded slowly. "Not yet. Let's see what they do next. Maybe the colonial forces can handle this without involving the main defensive network." As the meeting continued, none of the humans seemed particularly worried about the approaching threat. They discussed logistics, supply lines, and defensive positions with the casual efficiency of people who had dealt with such problems before. To them, this was just another day at the office. Back in Zephyrian space, the war machine began to move. Ships were prepared, weapons were loaded, and soldiers were briefed on their upcoming victory. The Empire had never lost a war, and they saw no reason why these humans would be any different. They had no idea what they were about to face. Captain Zermach stood on the bridge of his flagship, Dominator, watching the blue and green world of New Athens grow larger on the main screen. Behind him, 200 Zephyrian warships moved in perfect formation through space. This was the largest battle group the Empire had deployed in over 50 years, and Zermach felt confident it would be enough to crush these troublesome humans. Scan the system, he ordered his sensor officer. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with. The young Zephyrian officer worked at his console for several minutes before looking up with confusion. Sir, I'm detecting 15 human vessels in defensive positions around the planet. They appear to be much smaller than our ships, but their energy signatures are unusual. Zermak studied the tactical display. 15 ships against 200. The humans were either very brave or very stupid. Open a channel to the human fleet. The main screen flickered, showing the face of a human female. She had short brown hair and calm blue eyes. Her uniform was simple, with minimal decorations. She looked young, perhaps in her early 30s. This is Lieutenant Commander Amy Davis of the New Athens Defense Force, she said. You are entering human space without permission. Please state your intentions. Zermak laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. Human, I am Captain Zermak of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy. You are surrounded and outnumbered. Surrender now, and your death will be quick. Amy Davis tilted her head slightly, as if considering his words. I appreciate the offer, but I'm afraid I can't accept. The people of New Athens are under my protection. Then you will die protecting them, Zermak snarled. All ships, attack formation. Destroy the human fleet. The Zephyrian ships began to move forward, their weapons charging. Zermak expected the humans to either run or surrender. Instead, something unexpected happened. The 15 human ships suddenly accelerated to impossible speeds, scattering in all directions. What? Zermak shouted. How are they moving so fast? His tactical officer was studying the sensors frantically. Sir, their ships are somehow manipulating space-time around them. They're not using conventional propulsion. The human ships were formed into a new pattern, one that seemed random but somehow felt threatening. They moved like dancers, each ship knowing exactly where the others would be. The Zephyrian computers couldn't predict their movements. Fire at will, Zermak commanded. The Zephyrian fleet opened fire with hundreds of energy beams and missiles. The space around New Athens lit up with explosions and weapon fire. But when the light faded, all 15 human ships were still there, undamaged. Impossible, whispered the tactical officer. They should have been destroyed. Amy Davis appeared on the screen again. Your weapons are impressive, but you're using very old technology. Our shields work differently than what you're used to. What do you mean? Zermak demanded. Your weapons fire in straight lines and use fixed energy patterns, Amy explained. Calmly. Our shields predict where your shots will go and what frequency they'll use. By the time your weapons reach us, we're already protected against them. The human ships began to return fire. Their weapons were different from anything the Zephyrians had seen before. Instead of simple energy beams, they fired something that looked like living light. The beams curved and twisted through space, seeking their targets. The first Zephyrian ship hit by these weapons simply vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. Not destroyed, not exploded, just gone. Where did it go? Zermak asked. Unknown, sir, his sensor officer replied. It just stopped existing. More human weapons fired and more Zephyrian ships disappeared. The survivors began to panic. They had never seen anything like this before. Their weapons couldn't hit the humans, but the human weapons seemed to erase their ships from reality. All ships, full retreat, Zermak ordered. We need to regroup and analyze this threat, but retreat was not as simple as it seemed. The human ships had somehow surrounded the entire Zephyrian fleet. They moved so fast and with such precision that they seemed to be everywhere at once. Every time a Zephyrian ship tried to escape, it found a human vessel waiting for it. Sir, we've lost 60 ships, reported the tactical officer. The humans are hurting us like animals. Zermak watched in horror as his proud fleet was slowly picked apart. The humans weren't just defeating them, they were playing with them. Amy Davis appeared on the screen again. Captain Zermak, I'm going to give you one chance to leave. She said, take your remaining ships and go home. Don't come back. This isn't over, Zermak growled. The Empire will send more ships. We will crush you. Amy Davis smiled sadly. I hope not, for your sake. The surviving Zephyrian ships fled the system, leaving behind nearly a third of their fleet. Zermuk spent a journey home trying to understand what had happened. His reports to the Empire described weapons that defied physics and ships that moved like living things. On New Athens, Amy Davis stood in the command center of the orbital defense platform. Around her, technicians were already analyzing the battle data. The fight had lasted only 3 hours, but it had provided valuable information about their new enemies. "Interesting weapons," commented Dr. Kevin Ross, the chief science officer. "Their energy beams are powerful but very predictable. Their targeting systems are slow and their tactics are outdated." "What about their numbers?" Amy asked. "They brought 200 ships. That's a significant force." "Not really," Kevin replied. "Our intelligence suggests they have thousands of ships. If they were taking us seriously, they would have sent more." Amy nodded. "So this was just a probe." "They're testing our defenses." "Exactly. And they learned that we're not as helpless as they thought." Down on the planet's surface, General Marcus Webb was dealing with a different kind of problem. A small group of Zephyrian soldiers had managed to land before the space battle ended. They were now trying to capture the planetary government buildings. Marcus stood in the command bunker beneath New Athens City, watching the tactical displays. The alien soldiers were strong and well-armed, but they were making fundamental mistakes. They moved in predictable patterns and used outdated tactics. "Squad 7, move to intercept," he ordered. "Remember, they can't see in infrared." "Use that advantage." The human soldiers moved through the city streets like ghosts. They wore special uniforms that could change color to match their surroundings. Their weapons were silent, their movements coordinated. The Zephyrians never saw them coming. "Sir, we've captured 12 enemy soldiers," reported Sergeant Tony Martinez. Over the radio, "They're asking how we knew where they would be," Marcus smiled. "Tell them we've been fighting this kind of war for a long time." The truth was more complex. Human soldiers were trained to think like their enemies. They studied alien psychology, learned to predict behavior patterns, and practiced fighting in small groups against larger forces. To them, the Zephyrian tactics were like reading a book they had memorized. Back in the Zephyrian Empire, Emperor Veltar was reading Zermuk's battle report with growing concern. The captain described human ships that could disappear and reappear at will, weapons that erased matter from existence, and soldiers who seemed to know the future. "This is impossible," the Emperor said to his council. "No species has technology this advanced." General Rexler studied the data carefully. "Your Majesty, perhaps we underestimated these humans. They may be more dangerous than we thought." "How dangerous could they be?" the Emperor asked. "They only control 12 systems. We control 40,000. "But what if those 12 systems are better defended than we assumed?" Rexler suggested. "What if they have been preparing for war?" Emperor Veltar considered this. The Empire had grown used to easy victories. Most species they encountered were primitive, with simple weapons and basic tactics. The humans were different. They fought like they understood war in ways the Empire had forgotten. "Double the force again," the Emperor commanded. "Send Admiral Kekstar with a full sector fleet. 2,000 ships should be enough to handle any tricks these humans might have." "Your Majesty, that's one of our largest fleets," Rexler warned. "Are you sure it's necessary?" "I'm sure," the Emperor replied. "These humans have embarrassed the Empire twice now. It ends here." On Earth, Admiral Ryan Bell was reviewing the battle reports from New Athens. The colonial defense forces had performed exactly as expected. The Zephyrian technology was impressive but predictable. Their tactics were outdated, their strategies inflexible. "Any word from the outer colonies?" he asked his aide. "All quiet, sir. The Zephyrians seem to be regrouping. Our intelligence suggests they're preparing a much larger force." Bell nodded. "How large?" "Possibly thousands of ships, sir." "Thousands," Bell repeated thoughtfully. "That's getting close to the threshold where we might need to consider escalation." "Should I alert the main fleet?" the aide asked. Bell shook his head. "Not yet. Let's see what Amy Davis and her people can do with a real challenge." The colonial forces were designed for exactly this kind of situation. And if they can't handle it, Admiral Bell smiled, then we'll have to show these aliens why humanity doesn't start wars. We finish them. The stage was set for a much larger confrontation. The Empire was committing serious resources to crush what they saw as a growing threat. The humans were preparing to defend their colonies with everything. Admiral Kexthar stood before the largest fleet the Zephyrian Empire had assembled in decades. 2,000 warships stretched across space like a metal ocean, their hulls gleaming under the light of distant stars. This was the pride of the Empire. Vessels that had conquered hundreds of worlds and defeated countless enemies. Today, we end the human threat, Kexthar announced to his captains through the fleet communication system. These primitives have embarrassed us twice. It will not happen again. The massive fleet moved toward the human system containing Frontier Station, the largest human outpost in the region. Intelligence reports suggested it was humanity's main stronghold, heavily defended and strategically important. If they could capture it, the human resistance would collapse. "Sir, we're detecting human ships," reported Commander Yextel from the sensor station. Approximately 500 vessels in defensive formation around the station. Kexthar studied the tactical display with satisfaction. 500 ships was more than the humans had deployed before, but still a fraction of his force. They're finally taking us seriously. Good, it will make their defeat more meaningful. The human fleet was arranged in a pattern that seemed chaotic to Zephyrian eyes. Ships of different sizes moved in complex formations, weaving between each other like a school of fish. At the center of the formation was Frontier Station, a massive structure that looked more like a small city than a military base. "Open communications," Kexthar ordered. "Let's see who commands this doomed fleet." The main screen activated, showing the face of a human male. He was older than the previous commanders, with gray hair and tired eyes. His uniform was simple but well-maintained, and he wore the insignia of a colonel. "I am Colonel Danny Hayes, commander of the Frontier Defense Group," the human said. "You are trespassing in human space. This is your final warning to withdraw," Kexthar laughed. "Human, I'm Admiral Kexthar of the Imperial Navy. I command 2,000 warships. You have 500. The mathematics are simple." "Mathematics," Danny repeated thoughtfully. "You know, I was never very good at math, but I understand tactics." "Your tactics will not save you," Kexthar declared. "All ships, attack formation, destroy the human fleet." The Zephyrian armada began to advance, their weapons charging. It was an impressive sight, 2,000 ships moving in perfect synchronization. But as they approached the human formation, something strange happened. The human ships began to move in impossible ways. They didn't just change direction, they seemed to phase in and out of normal space. One moment a ship would be there, the next it would vanish, only to reappear somewhere else entirely. "What's happening?" Kexthar demanded. "Sir, the human ships are somehow moving through dimensions we can't detect," his science officer reported. "They're not using conventional faster-than-light travel. They're doing something else." The first wave of Zephyrian ships opened fire, sending thousands of energy beams toward the human fleet. But the beams passed through empty space. The human ships were no longer where they appeared to be. Suddenly the humans struck back. They materialized inside the Zephyrian formation, their weapons firing from point-blank range. Zephyrian ships began to explode all around the fleet, caught completely by surprise. "Impossible," Kexthar whispered. "They're inside our formation. How did they get past our sensors?" Captain Nicole Ross commanded the human vessel Defiant, leading a squadron of 12 ships through the heart of the Zephyrian fleet. Her ships moved like dancers, appearing and disappearing in perfect coordination. They struck at the largest Zephyrian vessels, targeting their command centers and weapon systems. "Blue Squadron, target their communications array," Nicole ordered. "Green Squadron, take out their sensor networks. Red Squadron, follow me to their flagship." The human ships obeyed instantly, moving as if they shared a single mind. They struck with surgical precision, disabling rather than destroying when possible. It was clear they were not fighting to kill, but to neutralize the threat. How are they coordinating like this? Asked Lieutenant Paul Green, Nicole's tactical officer. It's like they know what we're thinking before we think it. That's because they do, Nicole replied. Our ships are connected through quantum entanglement. When one of us makes a decision, all of us know it instantly. We're not fighting as separate ships, we're fighting as one organism. Zephyrian. Fleet tried to respond, but their tactics were designed for conventional warfare. They expected enemies to fight in predictable patterns using known physics and standard strategies. The humans were doing none of these things. Sir, we've lost 300 ships, reported Commander Yextal. The humans are targeting our command vessels first. They're trying to break our coordination. Kexthar watched in horror as his proud fleet was systematically dismantled. The humans weren't just defeating them, they were doing it with an efficiency that suggested they had studied Zephyrian tactics for years. All ships, fall back to defensive positions, he ordered. Form a sphere around the flagship. The surviving Zephyrian ships tried to regroup, but the humans were already inside their formation. They struck from every angle, their weapons adapting to whatever defenses the Zephyrians tried to use. Dr. Patricia Stone, the Empire's leading expert on alien technology, watched the battle from her laboratory ship at the edge of the fleet. She had been studying the wreckage of human ships from previous battles, trying to understand their technology. This is remarkable, she said to her assistant. Their weapons don't just fire energy, they fire information. Information? The assistant asked. Yes, each shot carries data about the target, the environment, the battle situation. Their weapons literally learn from each shot they fire. By the time they fire a second shot at the same target, they already know exactly how to penetrate its defenses. The battle continued for hours. The humans fought with a coordination that seemed impossible, their ships moving in patterns that defied conventional understanding of space combat. They struck at exactly the right moment, in exactly the right place, with exactly the right weapon. Sir, the humans are transmitting something, reported the communications officer. It's a training manual. What? Kexthar asked. They're broadcasting basic space combat tactics. Elementary maneuvers, weapon targeting, defensive formations. They're trying to teach us how to fight. Kexthar stared at the screen in disbelief. The humans were winning a battle against overwhelming odds, and they were using it as a teaching opportunity. They weren't just defeating the Empire, they were insulting it. End this, he commanded. All ships, full retreat. We're leaving. The surviving Zephyrian ships began to withdraw, but the humans let them go. They could have destroyed the entire fleet, but they chose mercy instead. As the Imperial vessels limped away, the human fleet reformed around Frontier Station. Colonel Danny Hayes appeared on the screen one final time. Admiral Kexthar, you fought bravely today. Your people have honor, but you're using tactics that are thousands of years old. War has evolved. You need to evolve with it. This isn't over, Kexthar replied weakly. I hope it is, Danny said sadly. For everyone's sake. The Zephyrian fleet retreated to Imperial space, leaving behind 800 ships and thousands of dead. The survivors carried with them a terrible knowledge. The humans were not just advanced. They were fighting a completely different kind of war back on the Imperial homeworld. Emperor Veltar received the report with growing dread. 800 ships lost to a force one-fourth their size. His greatest admiral defeated by an enemy who seemed to know their every move before they made it. How is this possible? He asked his council. They're just one species. We've conquered thousands of worlds. General Rexler studied the battle recordings with a growing sense of unease. Your Majesty, I've been analyzing their ship markings, the vessels we fought today. They weren't marked as frontline units. What were they? Marked as? Training Squadron Beta, Rexler replied quietly. Colonial Defense Reserve. Frontier Patrol Group, Your Majesty, I don't think we've been fighting their real military. The Emperor felt a chill run through his veins. What do you mean? I mean, we may have been fighting their equivalent of a police force. Their actual Military might still be waiting. The throne room fell silent. The implications of Rexthor's words were too terrible to contemplate. If the humans had been holding back, if they had been fighting with training units and reserve forces, then what would happen when they deployed their real strength? Send every available ship to the border, the Emperor commanded. Fortify our positions. And find out everything you can about human military capabilities, everything. As the Empire scrambled to prepare for what they now realized might be a real war, the humans continued their daily lives. The battle at Frontier Station was already being used as a training exercise for new recruits. The tactics employed were being studied and improved. In the depths of space, humanity's true strength remained hidden, waiting to see if it would be needed. The Empire had no idea that they were about to discover the difference between humanities. Local defense forces and the species that had prepared for war among the stars. Emperor Veltar paced around his crystal throne, his 4 eyes focused on the holographic display showing the battle recordings from Frontier Station. Around him, the Empire's greatest military minds sat in uncomfortable silence. The footage played again and again, showing Zephyrian ships being destroyed by an enemy that seemed to dance through space. Play it again, the Emperor commanded. Focus on Section 7 Alpha. General Rexthor manipulated the controls, zooming in on a specific part of the battle. The recording showed a human ship appearing inside a group of Zephyrian vessels, firing once, then vanishing before the enemy could respond. Watch carefully, Rexthor said to the assembled officers. Look at the weapon power readings. On the screen, numbers appeared next to the human ship. The weapons were firing at 60% power. Not full strength, not even close to maximum output, 60%. They were holding back, whispered Admiral Mortek, one of the Empire's most decorated commanders. Even while fighting for their lives, they were holding back. The Emperor stopped pacing. What does that mean? General Rexthor stood up slowly. Your Majesty, it means they could have destroyed our entire fleet, but they chose not to. The room fell silent. The implications were terrifying. If the humans had been restraining themselves during the battle, what would happen if they decided to use full power? Continue the analysis, the Emperor ordered. Rexthor activated another recording. This one showing the human fleet's formation patterns. Notice how they move. Perfect coordination, instant communication, no hesitation, but look at this. He highlighted several ships in the formation. These vessels are marked with training squadron identifiers. Training squadron? The Emperor asked. Yes, Your Majesty. We weren't fighting their main fleet. We were fighting their students. Dr. Patricia Stone stepped forward from her position near the back of the room. She had been studying captured human technology for weeks, and her findings were disturbing. Your Majesty, I've analyzed the debris from our previous encounters. The human ships we've been fighting are classified in their own documentation as light patrol vessels and colonial defense units. What does that mean? The Emperor demanded. It means we've been fighting their local police, Your Majesty, not their military. The Emperor sat down heavily on his throne. Show me their real military capabilities. Dr. Stone activated a new display showing intercepted human communications. We've been monitoring their transmissions. Most are routine messages about supply deliveries, personnel transfers, and training schedules. But we've found references to something called the Soul Fleet. Soul Fleet? Their home system defense force, Your Majesty. According to these communications, it consists of approximately 50,000 warships. The silence in the throne room was complete. 50,000 ships. The entire Zephyrian military had 40,000 vessels spread across their empire. The humans had more ships in their home system alone. That's impossible, Admiral Mortek said weakly. They only control 12 systems. Correction, Dr. Stone replied. They only colonize 12 systems. Our intelligence suggests they control much more space than that. They just don't live there. General Rexthor activated another display. We've also intercepted communications from someone called Commander Kevin Park. He referred to the forces we've been fighting as local militia and mentioned that the real fleet might not be needed. The Emperor's scaled hands gripped the arms of his throne. What else have you learned? The humans we've been fighting are apparently part of something called the Colonial Defense Force. Their mission is to protect outlying settlements while the main military handles larger threats. Your Majesty, we may have declared war on their equivalent of a neighborhood watch. Dr. Stone stepped forward again. There's more, Your Majesty. We intercepted a battle report from Admiral Susan Clark. She's listed as a junior regional commander, responsible for training exercises and colonial defense. The woman who defeated our sector fleet is a junior commander? The Emperor asked. Yes, Your Majesty. And her mission was listed as a training exercise. She was using our attacks to train new recruits. The assembled officers looked at each other with growing horror. They had sent their best fleets against what the humans considered practice targets. Their greatest victories had been the enemy's homework assignments. What about their actual military commanders? The Emperor asked. General Rexler consulted his datapad. We've identified several names from intercepted communications. Fleet Admiral Karen Wright, Supreme Commander Lisa Torres, Strategic Defense Coordinator Mike Johnson. But we have no information about their actual capabilities or the forces they command. Find out, the Emperor commanded. I want to know everything about their real military. While the Empire scrambled to understand their enemy, humanity continued its normal operations. On a routine patrol near the edge of human space, Commander Kevin Park was reviewing the latest battle reports on his ship Guardian, Frontier Station. Handled the situation well, he told his first officer, Lieutenant Carol Brown. Danny Hayes and his people gave those aliens a good lesson in modern combat. Should we be concerned about the Empire's response? Carol asked. Kevin shrugged. They'll probably send more ships. The colonial forces can handle it. That's what they're trained for. What if they send everything they have? Then we might need to consider escalation, Kevin replied. But I doubt it will come to that. Most species learn when to stop pushing. On Earth, Admiral Ryan Bell was having a similar conversation with President Lisa Carter. They sat in the Oval Office, reviewing intelligence reports about Zephyrian military movements. They're massing fleets along our border, Bell reported. Intelligence suggests they're preparing for a major offensive. How major? The President asked. Possibly their entire military, 30 to 40,000 ships. President Carter considered this. Can the colonial forces handle that kind of assault? Probably not, Bell admitted. The CDF is designed to handle raiders and small invasion forces. If the Empire commits everything, we'll need to activate the main defense network. What are your recommendations? Let's see what they do first. If they attack with everything they have, we can respond appropriately. The Seoul Defense Force has been training for this kind of scenario for decades. Meanwhile, deep in Zephyrian space, spy ships were trying to penetrate human territory. Captain Yelshar commanded one of these vessels, a small craft designed for stealth reconnaissance. His mission was to gather intelligence about human military capabilities. Approaching the Sol system, his navigator reported, initiating stealth protocols. The spy ship slipped past the outer planets, its sensors recording everything they encountered. What they found defied belief. Massive shipyards orbited the outer planets, each one larger than a Zephyrian city. Construction platforms stretched for hundreds of kilometers, building vessels that dwarfed anything in the Imperial fleet. How many ships are under construction? Yelshar asked. At least 3,000, sir. But these aren't like the ships we've been fighting. These are much larger. Some of them are bigger than our battle stations. Yelshar studied the sensor readings with growing alarm. The ships under construction were not just large, they were advanced beyond anything the Empire possessed. Their hulls were made from materials that didn't appear on any known periodic table. Their weapon systems were so sophisticated that the spy ship's computers couldn't identify their function. Sir, we're detecting approximately 50,000 active warships in the inner system. They're arranged in defensive formations around the third planet. 50,000 ships, just as the intelligence reports had suggested. But seeing them was different from reading about them. These weren't patrol vessels or training ships. These were warships designed for one purpose: to fight and win against impossible odds. "Get us out of here," Yelshar ordered. "We need to. Report this immediately." The spy ship began its journey back to Imperial space, carrying with it the most terrifying intelligence the Empire had ever received. The humans weren't just more advanced than expected, they were operating on a completely different scale of warfare. When the intelligence reached Emperor Veltar, he read the report 3 times before believing it. The humans had been fighting them with less than 1% of their actual military strength. The colonial forces that had defeated his best admirals were essentially civilians with advanced technology. "Your Majesty," General Rexler said quietly, "perhaps we should consider a diplomatic solution." "Diplomacy?" the Emperor asked. "Yes, Your Majesty. If these intelligence reports are accurate, we cannot win a war against the humans. Our only hope is to negotiate peace before they decide to deploy their real military." The Emperor looked around the room at his advisors. For the first time in the Empire's history, they were facing an enemy they couldn't defeat. The humans had shown them mercy so far, but how long would that mercy last? "Prepare a diplomatic mission," the Emperor commanded. "But also prepare our defenses. If diplomacy fails, we need to be ready for what comes next." As the Empire began to understand the true scope of their mistake, humanity remained blissfully unaware of the panic they had caused. To them, the recent skirmishes were minor border incidents easily handled by local forces. They had no idea that their enemy. Professor Bill Martinez stood at the podium in the University of New Terra's main lecture hall, addressing a group of colonial history students. The elderly professor adjusted his glasses and clicked to the next slide in his presentation about recent galactic events. "The colonial defense forces have been performing admirably in recent months," he said casually to his students. "The incidents with the Zephyrian Empire have provided excellent training opportunities for our junior officers." In the back of the lecture hall, a Zephyrian spy drone recorded every word. The Empire had managed to infiltrate several human academic institutions, hoping to learn more about their enemy's capabilities. "Professor Martinez," a student asked, "how significant are these defense forces compared to our total military?" Bill smiled and pulled up a chart showing human military organization. "Well, the colonial defense forces represent approximately 3% of our total military capacity. They're designed to handle local threats while our main forces focus on larger strategic concerns. The spy drone sensors nearly overloaded, 3%. Everything the Empire had fought, all their defeats and losses, had been against 3% of human military strength." "What about the other 97%? Another student asked. "Oh, they're stationed throughout the Sol system and other strategic locations," Bill replied. "The Sol Defense Force alone has been conducting training exercises with about 50,000 vessels. Quite impressive to watch, really." The professor clicked to another slide showing a photograph of the Sol system during a training exercise. Thousands of massive warships moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming in the sunlight. Each ship was larger than anything the Zephyrian Empire had ever built. "Of course," Bill continued, "this is just one branch of our defensive capabilities. The exploration fleets, humanitarian armadas, and deep space projects each have their own vessels. Military service is just one career path among many." The spy drone transmitted this information back to Zephyrian intelligence, where it caused immediate panic. The humans had entire fleets dedicated to exploration and humanitarian work that were separate from their military. How many ships did they actually have? On the Imperial homeworld, Emperor Veltar read the intercepted lecture transcript with growing dread. Professor Martinez had casually mentioned military capabilities that exceeded the Empire's wildest estimates. Worse, he had spoken about them as if they were common knowledge, nothing special or secret. "Send more spies," the Emperor commanded. "I want to know everything about their military structure." The next intelligence breakthrough came from an intercepted interview with Dr. Rachel Green, a human scientist working on civilian space projects. She was speaking to a Colonial News reporter about her latest research. The deep space exploration program has been fascinating, Dr. Green said cheerfully. We've launched about 200,000 automated survey vessels to map distant galaxies. Each one is equipped with basic defensive systems, of course, the reporter nodded. 200,000 ships for exploration alone. That's quite an investment. Oh, that's just the unmanned vessels, Rachel clarified. The manned exploration fleets are much smaller. Only about 30,000 ships, but they're designed for long-range missions lasting decades. The Zephyrian agents monitoring the broadcast nearly collapsed. 30,000 ships for exploration. 200,000 automated vessels. The humans were treating interstellar exploration like a hobby, deploying fleets larger than the Empire's entire military for scientific research. What about the humanitarian fleets? The reporter asked. The Relief Corps maintains about 20,000 vessels, Rachel replied. They respond to natural disasters, provide medical aid, that sort of thing. Very rewarding work. Emperor Veltar threw his datapad across the throne room when he read this intelligence report. The humans had 20,000 ships dedicated to medical aid. Ships that were probably more advanced than his best warships, used for helping sick people. Your Majesty, General Rexler said carefully, perhaps we should consider the possibility that we have made a serious mistake. Before the Emperor could respond, another intelligence report arrived. This one contained information that made everything else seem insignificant. Admiral Tony Rodriguez, commander of the human vessel Earthguard, had been intercepted giving a lecture to new recruits. The Zephyrian spies had assumed he was a fleet commander based on his title. They were wrong. Welcome to advanced combat training, Rodriguez had said to his students. I'm your instructor for this course. We'll be practicing defensive formations and basic combat tactics against simulated enemies. One of the students had asked about the recent battles with the Zephyrian Empire. Those engagements have been excellent training exercises, Rodriguez replied. The enemy uses outdated tactics and predictable strategies, making them perfect for teaching new officers how to handle real combat situations. The spy drone recorded the entire lecture, including Rodriguez's casual mention that the advanced combat exercises were what the Empire had been calling impossible battle tactics. Their greatest defeats had been teaching moments for human students. Emperor Veltar sat in stunned silence as he read the report. The human commander who had destroyed entire Zephyrian fleets was not a military genius or a battle-hardened veteran. He was a teacher. The impossible tactics that had baffled Imperial strategists were homework assignments for human children. Your Majesty, Rexler said quietly, we need to contact them immediately, before they decide we're a serious threat. The Emperor was about to respond when his communications officer burst into the throne room. Your Majesty, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. They want to speak with you directly. Which human fleet? The Emperor asked. All of them, sir. The main screen activated, showing the face of a human woman. She appeared to be in her 50s, with gray-streaked hair and calm blue eyes. Her uniform was different from the others they had seen, more formal and decorated with symbols of rank. Emperor Veltar, she said politely, I am Fleet Admiral Karen Wright, commander of the Soul Defense Force. I believe we need to talk. The Emperor tried to maintain his dignity, but his voice cracked slightly when he spoke. Admiral Wright, we have been trying to understand your military capabilities. Karen smiled gently. I'm sure you have. That's why I'm contacting you directly. I wanted to clear up any misunderstandings before this situation escalates further. What misunderstandings? The Emperor asked, though he feared he already knew. Well, you've been fighting our colonial defense forces. Excellent people, very dedicated, but they're essentially campus security. I wanted to make sure you understood that before you made any decisions you might regret. The Emperor felt his world crumble around him. Campus security. They had been defeated by campus security. How many ships do you command, Admiral Wright? He asked weakly. In the Sol system? About 50,000 active vessels, with another 30,000 in reserve. But that's just Earth's local defense. Each of our major systems has similar capabilities. The Emperor did quick mental calculations. If each human system had 50,000 ships, and they controlled 12 systems, that meant at least 600,000 warships. The Empire had 40,000 total. However, Karen continued, the Sol Defense Force is just one branch of our space services. We also have exploration fleets, research vessels, humanitarian armadas, deep space survey units, and various other specialized forces. How many ships total? The Emperor whispered. Total? Karen looked thoughtful. Honestly? I'm not sure. We don't usually count them all together. The civilian agencies operate independently, and the deep space projects are classified. But if I had to guess, maybe 2 million active vessels, 2 million ships. The Empire had been fighting an enemy with 2 million ships using 40,000. It wasn't a war, it was suicide? Admiral Wright, the Emperor said carefully, what are your intentions regarding the Empire? Karen's expression became serious. That depends entirely on you, Emperor Veltar. If you choose to continue this conflict, we will defend ourselves. And I should mention that if we do have to escalate, it won't be the colonial forces responding. Anymore, what would respond? Me, Karen said simply. And the rest of the actual military. The people you've been fighting have been asking me to stay out of it. They wanted to handle the situation themselves, and they've done an admirable job. But if you force our hand... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. What do you propose? The Emperor asked. Pirenne replied. Simple as that. You stop attacking our colonies, we stop sinking your ships. We can even establish trade relations if you're interested. The galaxy is big enough for both of us. Emperor Veltar looked around his throne room at his advisors. They all nodded eagerly. Peace had never sounded so appealing. We accept, the Emperor said quickly. On behalf of the Zephyrian Empire, we formally request a ceasefire and the establishment of diplomatic relations. Karen smiled. Excellent. I'll have our diplomatic corps contact you within the week. And Emperor Veltar? Yes, thank you for being reasonable. It would have been a shame to escalate this conflict unnecessarily. The transmission ended, leaving the throne room in complete silence. The Emperor sat back in his throne.